This is episode 30, and it's our season 1 finale.
Can you believe it? We made it to season 1 finale time.
We thought that we would end season 1 with something special, something personal, some things we don't necessarily talk about. We have shared all sorts of grievances in honor of Festivus.
Festivus, yes, the airing of the grievances.
Welcome back to the Meg and Amy Show. Thank you so much for the support for our show. Please do like and subscribe and add comments. Hey, Meg.
Hey, Amy, look at us, December. We made it.
Celebration time. I think we both have some sparkles on.
Yes, definitely. This is a moment to reflect the holidays, to reflect the end of the year, to reflect oh my gosh, the progress of the Meg and Amy Show, and maybe just to think a little bit about all of the things that have changed about us over this year, both for the good and maybe a little bit for not so good. Who knows? Yeah.
Interesting. Well, so first off, I believe that there was an anniversary celebrated this past week. Do you want to
yes,
share
you're talking about
that?
last weekend. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For our listeners who haven't heard us brag about our amazing book club before, apologies. We're gonna take a minute and celebrate our book club. So we belong to what Meg named, and it seems to have stuck, the Bay Area Badass Book Club.
I didn't realize that you were the namer. Look at
Oh,
you.
Yes,
Nice.
indeed.
Very
indeed.
good. And I also hadn't quite really realized that you were a founder of the book.
Well, at the time, I wasn't considered a founder. I was considered an invitee to the very first book club. So we just celebrated 20 years. And they asked me if I would do a toast to our amazing founder, Jenny Lehman. And it was actually both Jenny Lehman and Heidi Spierge that decided to start a book club. And they happened to mention it. They might have been inviting me, or they might have just been mentioning that they also liked to read books and that they were thinking of doing a book club. It's possible I invited myself because I had never been part of a book club, but as you know, I've always been a reader, so I jumped on that in a big way.
Yeah, well, and so I think really importantly, Jenny Lehman was the VP of Product Strategy at PeopleSoft back in the day, on the 4th floor of Hacienda that Jason Averbook mentioned in our last episode, actually. And Heidi was part of Jason's team on the marketing side, and Meg was running a development team, but on the 3rd floor.
I was not actually on the 4th floor. I didn't correct Jason because I like to have people imagine that I belonged on the 4th floor, but I wasn't actually on the 4th floor. So the 4th floor had all the strategy marketing people. Did seem to have a higher bar for attractiveness than maybe you would have seen at the rest of the engineering floors. So there were a lot of reasons I felt like I should be part of the 4th floor.
It was a pretty attractive floor and a young group.
Very,
too,
yes.
Right. It was, we were all kind of like in our late 20s, early 30s, running the world.
That's right.
It's pretty great. So
a lot of bubbly energy, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of badassery. It was pretty awesome. Yes.
And the legacy of that time is just luminaries all sprinkled all over the industry, and so it really was a special place, and it's just amazing that we still have this connectivity across the industry with this group of women.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the PayPal mafia, but I think in the HR industry in particular, the PeopleSoft mafia was not to be trifled with. There was a lot of really great people that went off to do some really great things. And I was only there for a short period, but felt very fortunate and very eager to become part of that group.
So the other thing that I would say, Meg, that's top of mind right now, given the holiday season, is the role of moms. We just watched Bad Moms Christmas at home
Very nice.
here, and it's a staple every year where moms feel overburdened and have to take back Christmas. We had the Women in the Workplace 2025 report come out, and it talked about how women lacked ambition, and
Yeah.
and it had zero mentions of caregiving, of motherhood, of any of these obstacles that women face. So what are your thoughts?
It's so interesting to me because obviously this has been a pretty big transitional year for me in the empty nesting and kids stepping up and stepping into their own adulthood. Gives you a moment to let go of some things you used to do, and gives you also a moment to reflect on, oh my goodness, all the things you used to do. And so I just have so much compassion for people with young kids at home, the outsized, ridiculous expectations of what parents are expected to do to get the kids through the end of the term and through all the Christmas parties, the gift exchanges, the gifts for the teachers. You got to bring the snacks, you got to do all the things. And usually with very poor planning and at very late notice. And then there's all the things you're trying to do in the home, which probably maybe even outsized expectation wise in your own head about how you want to decorate and how you want to think about gift giving and all of these other elements. And then what happens to most of us as we have professional jobs, usually there's end of year, end of quarter, end of cycle things that have to be completed as well. And so the squeeze on all of that, as I reflect back, especially in the moment of separation from it, having a little space from it, I am just recognizing how much of a burden that is. And also, of course, how much more of that burden tends to go towards moms. And even when you're in it, you tell yourself that you're, above it, not, not going to do as much, whatever sort of boundaries you try to create for yourself. It becomes very hard in the social pressure and in the parental guilt that you tend to take on. But what I find is fascinating is that as I start to let that go, I'm asking myself a lot of the things that I had done when I had even less time. Do I even want to do them now? Do I really want to be giving gifts to extended family? Instead, maybe I'm just going to do food bank donations and call it a day. What is my perspective on the enormous amount of work of sending holiday cards? What is my perspective on how the decorations need to be and by when and by what? And all of those sorts of things that I took on, I'm giving myself permission to ask, are these really things I want to carry forward? And if so, can I do it in a way that has more joy than workload? And I don't know if I have the answer for it, but I think it's worth being curious about. How about you?
Basically, I was an undercover man throughout my executive and even pre-executive career. So starting as a director and then on up. My husband was a stay-at-home dad. So I have one son, and my husband was a stay-at-home dad for the entirety of his life. And he's still alive, by the way. So I didn't want it to sound like he's dead.
But the stay-at-home dad job is probably...
and I had none of these responsibilities at all, during the year, during the holiday, anything. So I know that it is really easy for men with no responsibilities to just focus on their career. And I know that it is a huge burden for women. And so I just want to tell all of you women that I see you. I understand. And I can tell you that you are so right, that it is hard for you and it is not hard for them. I remember this story, Meg. It'll be interesting to see if you remember this. It was Valentine's Day, actually, so it wasn't Christmas, but And I was telling you about Paul, my husband, getting all of the Valentines for my son, who was like 5 or whatever, for his entire class. And you went, "You're letting Paul take care of the Valentines? How could you do that? Like, how, like, of course you have to do it." And I'm like, "Why would I do it? He's going to do it." And you're like, "But it'll probably be terrible. It'll probably be crappy." And I'm like, "Who cares?" Do you remember that?
Well, I don't remember specifically, but I'm not surprised about the story. I think if I were to state it slightly different, my perspective is if Bob had been told that there was a need to give Valentines for the class, he'd probably say, "Well, that's dumb, so I'm not going to do it."
Yeah,
And
that
you
sounds
have to
about right.
remember that my oldest child was not only incredibly social, but also it was very important to her to be the kid that was doing all of the things to make the other kids feel important and special, and not neglecting any of her perceived responsibilities. So the burden, was like double fold of, if it doesn't happen, in my mind now, whether it was 100% true or not, I don't know, but the burden in my mind would be that this would be very traumatic, and if it didn't happen, and if it wasn't done in a way that every kid in the class was given something.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like where my my point of view was probably coming from.
Yeah, but I think that's really typical, right?
Yes.
Of, and I don't mean that you're, not super unique, Meg, because you are, of course, but I think that's how a lot of women feel. So anyway, I see you.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I think, everybody's like, "Oh, it goes by so fast. You should enjoy every minute of it." I think it's okay to think it's bullshit sometimes. I really feel like all of this, like, "Oh, you're supposed to cherish every moment. It goes by so fast." I mean, it goes fast, fine. But there's some shitty parts. And when the kindergarten teacher sends you home a project to do at home as if you don't have enough things going on, I think it's okay to be like, "Yeah, that sort of sucks." Exactly.
To the point about presents, we stopped giving gifts about 7 years ago to anyone, including our son, who was, 12, 13 years old. And he was totally fine with it. So just...
Yeah, I don't think your son and my kids would have had the same reaction. Just to be clear, my kids would not be totally fine with it. One of them might be. One of them thinks that gifts are a waste. But yeah, no, I think that wouldn't fly in my household. But Malcolm has always amazed me at his flexibility.
So Charlotte Otter, friend of the show, posted recently that she's taken on a fractional CMO job, and what a gift it is to be able to work and not have caregiving responsibilities, because she's an empty nester. Despite the fact that I didn't have the caregiving responsibilities, I still was extremely busy in December, and I didn't necessarily have a whole bunch of time. But this year, because I am a little more freelance, I offered to make cookies with my 20-year-old son, and he said yes. And yesterday we made cookies, and it was so fun.
Wow, what kind of cookies?
We made red velvet cookies and snickerdoodles.
Look at you, Cece Homemaker. Well done.
All right, so before we dive into our topic of the day, we have some news. This is episode 30, and it's our season 1 finale.
Can you believe it? We made it to season 1 finale time. Who would have thought that would come so quickly?
And 30 episodes. Pretty great. We're going on a brief hiatus. We're calling it maternity leave, because our incredible executive producer, Madison, is having a baby. And we'll be back in March.
got to figure out how to get our hands on that baby for sure. We'll have to sort that out. But
Little road trip, perhaps.
we do appreciate all of our friends having babies in our vicinity, because we definitely don't get enough fun with babies these days. But yeah, so Amy and I have taken a couple maternity leaves together, but this is the first one where we kind of have no responsibility. So we'll see how this one's different.
Yeah, maternity leave with no maternity. It's
Exactly.
all right. So, in light of all of this big news, we thought that we would end season 1 with something special, something personal, and some things we don't necessarily talk about. We recently had an episode where we talked about our childhoods and how those experiences formed our leadership styles. And today we wanted to talk about some of the corporate scars that also taught us equally hard lessons. And we're sharing some stories that we don't usually tell, at least not to those other than the two of us. So you're going to be kind of eavesdropping on an insider conversation. We are going to be a little vague, not because we're going to be coy, but honestly, specifics don't matter, because these are patterns that play out, and I think everyone's going to recognize them in your own lives and your own career. And we thought we'd talk about what happened, what we did at the time, and then add a little bit of our leadership corner hats, especially Meg's big hat, to advise our former selves in case you might be in a similar situation in the future. All right, folks, you ready, Meg?
I am. This one I think is going to be big. A little bit of a gift from us, but also to your point, I don't think some of these stories I've said out loud before. So I'm interested to see where we go. So let's do this thing.
Yeah. What has Meg been hiding all these years? We are
Oh, yeah.
to find out. All right. So we've got some different archetypes that we're going to be discussing. So the first one is the credit thief. So this is someone who takes your ideas and passes them off as your own. I have an example. So it's pretty simple. I came up with a product idea, and when the guys who I shared the product idea with, when they built a version of it, they filed a patent and refused to include me after I asked several times to be included. They claim that what they built was different than what I had presented to them. Meg,
And just to remind people,
it wasn't that
right?
different.
And just to remind people, patents are not about built products. Patents are ideas of things that you will build. And therefore, to say that they built something different is like the entire premise is kind of bullshit, because it's the idea that you're patenting.
So what did I do in that moment? I would say that, well, first of all, it stung pretty hard. And I certainly stopped sharing my ideas with those people. And I would say that I definitely got a little bit more protective and careful about who I collaborated with. But Meg, what would you tell former Amy in this case? And did you run into these scenarios yourself, and how did you deal with them?
So interesting. I think my role was slightly different since I was a leader of engineers. I think I had a little bit less inclination in the kind of way I showed up at work for people to try to steal my idea in this sort of way. I think when you're a head of product, I think or design or any of these things that are kind of like at the early stage of an innovation, and also any place where I think you have a skill that other people maybe don't have or don't appreciate. I think you're more vulnerable to this, where somebody tries to, by the time they understand it, they think it's uniquely theirs. So one of the things that I recognize that would happen to me a lot is I would have ideas come much earlier than other people. And so when I would share ideas, I would incept them or seed them. And, maybe 6 months later, somebody would have my idea back again. And oftentimes in this case, they might have had that idea slightly independent of me, even though I knew I had incepted it in them. They didn't really understand it. One of the reasons I started blogging was to be able to get my ideas time-stamped. It was very important for me that I had something public that I could bring my ideas forward to, because I recognized not all the people around me were ready for those ideas, but maybe some people elsewhere were. And also, again, I wanted, for the things that I cared about, I wanted to be able to point to something objective to show its idea.
Well, and that was one of the reasons you wanted to do the podcast too, right? One reason was to get on record about what you're thinking, right?
Or just about the conversations that I think are important in this moment. But I think in your case, it's slightly, different. If I were to be your mentor, for young Amy, I don't think this particular one is winnable, because you had essentially a very black and white case, and people took advantage of you because they knew they could. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is one of those moments where you kind of have to take the sucker punch, and to your point, then figure out, like, who do I trust and how and why do I trust them? Mm-hmm. Because if you run this one all the way to the ground, if you stand up for yourself and make a big fuss, you're not going to win anyway. You may win this particular battle, but it's just going to leave such a bad taste in everybody's mouth that it's going to be, So,
well, honestly, just me asking a few times was bad enough. Just the act of me trying to claim my rights was enough to off-put this guy.
I think the biggest advice there is that this is a sign of a little bit of naivete about, what some of the archetypes are that are out there.
Yeah.
And you should take this as a expensive but important lesson to have learned.
Yeah. I remember you saying something like, "You're really trusting, Amy. You should be a little, you shouldn't be quite so trusting." I feel like I heard that in my head anyway. So, but I mean, that's kind of a sad thing to say, so people need to earn your trust.
That's right.
Right. How about another archetype, the Diminisher, otherwise known as Mean Girls, gender neutral. So this is someone who makes you feel small, sometimes subtly, sometimes not. I have a few of these, and I'm sure you do too, Meg. So the first one, is seemingly kind of funny and silly, and I even felt at the time that I was being ridiculous, thinking it was bad, but here goes. All right, so I was a director level at this time. I was up and coming, and the SVP who ran the organization was oddly obsessed with my toenail polish. I was an ambitious young person, and I really wanted my ideas to be recognized. I wanted my accomplishments to be recognized. And so whenever I would approach this SVP about an important work topic, the only thing that he wanted to discuss was, what particular shade of blue my toes were. So what did I do? I stopped wearing open-toed shoes.
So I think there were multiple things going on here, and I think this is sort of advice, probably pretty gendered, probably tied to more young women than men, but maybe there's a gender switch scenario that plays out. I think the other thing that is important to mention is, Amy, young, cute, and the discomfort that created to some senior leaders. So back to our conversation about at what point do men quit feeling protective of you and start feeling uncomfortable or threatened around you. Mm-hmm. And so this one, I think, was honestly less an intention of diminishing and more an intention of offloading awkwardness on physical appearance. Like, okay, well, I can't get any sort of harassment complaint when I comment on toenail polish versus commenting
true?
on
I would
your
think that you
outfit.
could. No?
Yeah, you probably could, but I think that was the logic going through the individual's point of view. And here is where I think it gets important is at the end of the day, figuring out how to navigate what is going to be the interpersonal relationship that you are comfortable with and that they are comfortable with you when you are not a dominant gender is always there. It's always in the back of your mind. Am I being objectified? Am I being, patted on the head and treated as ditzy? Am I being underestimated? Am like there's this whole range of things, and most of the time we feel them in a very nonverbal way. So you were reacting to his comment about your toes, but you were actually reacting to a discomfort that you were feeling and you didn't really have language for. And so, maybe the right thing was to change your shoes, to sort of just remove the opportunity for getting back to the conversation being about what you look like and getting on to the conversation being about what you're bringing to the table. But I just don't know if people fully appreciate the weight that comes on those of us that want to be seen as equal when the majority don't see us that way. They might first see us as, the way we look, or they might first see us as the assumptions they have about us, or they might think we're shrill or whatever, you pick your thing. And so I believe that you shouldn't change who you are for someone else, but I do think, again, upping your own awareness and removing a little naivete about that this is at play, I think can only help you. Because if you want to own your power, you have to understand what that means in the world of work. So I don't necessarily have great advice for young Amy other than to say, there's something physically about you that's making this particular person uncomfortable. If I had to guess, I'd say he's attracted to you and he's trying to figure out a way to not make that weird or awkward.
By making it weird and awkward.
Right, exactly. I'm failing completely.
Well, so Claude, my AI assistant said, you should have kept wearing the damn shoes. By changing your behavior, you let him win.
And I think that's true. But the question is, what is the win and what is the battle?
Yeah, exactly.
But the most important thing is what you absolutely cannot do is take inside you that insecurity, right? Yeah. And that's the risk. And that's the problem that happens for a lot of women. It's like this discomfort that is directed at us, somehow we absorb and make it about us, right? Mm-hmm. There was nothing wrong with your toes. There was nothing wrong with your nail polish color. There was nothing wrong with your physical appearance. And the fact that there was discomfort was not your making in that moment, but it still is your burden. I mean, at the end of the day, it still is your burden. And so for you to recognize that this is about them and not about me, so that you don't take that burden internally and turn that into something that becomes diminishing inside of you of who you are. I think that's the key. You still got to believe in yourself because, this stuff is going to happen.
Yep. And I did. And I had you to help me remember.
I would say that my Diminisher stories, and I don't have I have a lot, but I also don't have any really to mind that are as visceral as the nail polish. But certainly standing in the role of engineering, the number of times that it became clear to me right away people were underestimating my clarity of the technology and the technical problem. And what I started to learn was it really, again, had nothing to do with my technical aptitude. That it took me a very long time to come to the understanding is when people would come at me with this, well, you don't know anything because I went to this school or I did this thing or I've been an architect for this many years. Anytime somebody has to explain how important they are to you, of like their credentials and why you should care as opposed to having a discussion about the idea, it became pretty clear to me that it wasn't actually a lack of my ability. It was very clearly that my ability made them feel less, made them feel uncomfortable, made them feel a threat to their expertise. And since I might have had expertises they didn't have, they had to go against me with the one that they felt confident in and push on that. And so I had to be less in an area they were confident in. And for me, because of the world I was in, was a very lot around technical people.
It's really amazing that you had that revelation because that's so important. It's no less hard, but we talk a lot about what are the stories that we tell ourselves, and it's really easy to fall into a narrative that diminishes ourselves. And you were able to recognize and tell yourself a completely different story. That was damn true, but that's hard to do. And you did that pretty early on too, I think, right?
Yeah, I tend to tell people that like this particular skill is you really have to talk to yourself or advise yourself the same way you would advise your middle schooler about Mean Girls, which is why in my mind these diminishers are mean girls, because you always tell the middle schooler or the late elementary school kid who's being, having other kids be mean to them, you always tell them this is not about you. When people do that, they're doing that because there's something broken in them. There's some hurt in them that they're trying to accommodate for by taking it out on you. They were not giving you the plums because there's something broken about them. It's easy to see that when you're advising your kids when other kids are being shits, but it's really hard to advise yourself about that when other workers are being, awful. So
right.
I think it's that. I think it's recognizing that it's the same thing. Nobody ever really grows up. We're all just like stuck. Yeah.
I have two more stories. I'm going to do another one here that is along the same lines. And so at the time I was VP of product management, and I partnered with an SVP of development. This is the same guy who stole my idea earlier on. We partnered on an acquisition, and at the welcome party, this SVP acknowledged me as a product manager. Not that there's anything wrong with being a product manager, but keep in mind that I was the head of product management. I was not a product manager. I was the head of product management. And man, did that burn. He was, just generally starting to sabotage me so that he could be the hero of the story of this acquisition. And, so what did I do? I
went and cried.
Well, I had more notes on toxic people. But, honestly, I kind of had to stew in my own misery for a while. But when everything kind of went south, with this guy kind of at the head of it, I'm not a gun owner. In fact, at the time, I never held a gun, let alone shot a gun, but darn if I didn't print out a picture of his head. And when I was at my friend's ranch, I got out a gun and shot it.
Did you actually hit it? Like, did you get proficient at the gun?
Oh, what's that? Did I what?
Did you hit it? Did you get proficient at shooting the gun? Well done.
Yeah, I mean, so there was the rifle and then there was the handgun. That rifle I definitely was able to get pretty precise. The handgun was a little more.
Yeah, it's harder than it looks, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
anyway, I mean, I think that was a very good resolution to the whole, the whole thing. What do you think?
because again, it gave you back an opportunity, at least for yourself and your own framework, to take back your power. And that, I think, is again the key. Like, at the end of the day, mean girls are out there, diminishers are out there. They are working on their own stuff. They have their own, things that they're trying to accomplish at your expense. First and foremost is, again, don't let that turn inward. Keep your own perspective and your own agency. And then secondarily, find paths to remove yourself from these, kind of fraught situations. So back to whether you can trust them or not, how you show up. I would not be beneath the idea of grabbing the microphone and saying, oh, by the way, I actually have an entire team of product managers and we are so happy to...
I might have done something. I think everybody knew. It was just so blatant. It was just so blatant about trying to make me small. There couldn't be anything more obvious, right? So I have one more. It's a little different. And I'm interested to hear your take on it. This was a little later. As head of product, I was the primary presenter in an annual keynote, and my boss, who is the president, insisted...
Not me, by the way.
Not Jill.
Not Jill.
Anyway. No. Insisted that my dev counterpart share the stage with me, and that was fine. But when the president had their opening part in the keynote, he referred to my male development counterpart coming up later and did not mention me. So what did I do? I learned patience and grace, and that patience paid off. In the end, I was able to persevere and kind of win over this boss and make my mark. But gosh, it was, again, another sort of blatant, diminishing episode.
Yeah, and again, I think that one's even a little bit more instructive, because somebody that's above you doing that really is a red flag more than they're trying to steal power from you, versus maybe they're not seeing your power, right, or they don't appreciate it in the same way.
Yeah, well, I felt completely unvalued. Right. Like I barely existed. Right.
And so there's two responses to that are both important. Number one, again, to try to figure out how to be more visible and more valued by them, not by being mad at them necessarily for not valuing you, but to get better clarity of what do they value and is that available to you in your role. And then the second thing is, when people are inclined to diminish your power in a physical way, there really are some things you can do to stand into more space, to be more clearly in a decision-making role and in a more powerful role. And some of that is sort of how you physically show up, how you use your voice, so any of these sort of executive presence kind of coaching.
I did lobby very heavily for myself to get a presentation coach, and even at one point a voice coach as well. And I met with quite a bit of resistance, but ultimately won my case, and that helped a lot, I think.
One of the things that I have always done is taking very seriously investing in the progress that I wanted in my career. And when I talk to a lot of people, especially women, this is not something most people are comfortable with. Now, I am fortunate that I have a husband who is always like, when I say, oh, I think I might want to go to the TED conference, it costs a fortune. He's like, you should do that. Or, oh, I think I need to get a stylist because I dress dowdy and not professional. He's like, you should do that, and you should spend more money on that, and you need to take that seriously. So most people think that the only professional development comes from their work and how they lobby their boss or their organization to pay for it for them. I have always taken a point of view that that's step A, and step B is like, can I do it in the library? Can I find something on Masterclass? And step C is, I have a checkbook? Can I find somebody that has that, right targeted thing that I can pay for myself that's going to help me get to that next level, do that next thing? I really believe that a big part of this is identifying the problem, figuring out really creatively some things that you can do to mitigate it or combat it, and then investing in yourself like crazy to make that thing become something that's not holding you back, but actually can launch you forward. I always try to look at that like each of these setbacks are opportunities for me to find a new path.
Archetype number 3, the gatekeeper. This is a person who controls access to opportunities, to customers, to visibility, and wields that control like a weapon. And Meg, I know you have a few stories here.
Oh man, if there were like one place in my career that I have bumped up to a problem over and over again, I think I've had all the others, but I've kind of just like ignored them as, whatever, they'll work themselves out. But the gatekeepers, man, they're so good. I have been blocked from so many things. I have been told I was not needed for so many things, whether it was analyst meetings or customer meetings or trips to go connect with salespeople, or, you name it, there's almost always been someone, and usually in a lower role than me, but in a orchestration facilitation role, that has decided or been instructed to try to keep me out of it. And oh my goodness, this is like such a recurring pattern. It makes my head spin. But my favorite story of this,
it like almost got to like a reverse effect in that if no one was trying to prevent you from doing something, then you just didn't even want to do it.
Exactly. Right? It must not be very good.
Like, this is way too easy. This clearly is not.
Yeah.
This is not worth my time.
Oh, it's so very true. But my favorite story about this, so way back, our good friends, Trish and Steve, had one of the first things that was a precursor to podcasts, which were radio shows. And the HR Happy Hour was a radio show. Now, this was in the early days when Amy and I were working on the Fusion products, which were not GA yet. And so there was a lot of restriction about what we could and couldn't talk about publicly because of the concern that we didn't want to stop any or freeze the market. We didn't want to stop any sales of PeopleSoft or eBusiness Suite or any of those things for a product that wasn't going to be out for about a year. And so all of that made sense, and we were very cautious and careful about how we showed up. But the HR Happy Hour show was not a product show. It wasn't even an analyst show. It was a show talking about HR trends, and I was invited to join that show. And so I was excited about it, like, okay, finally we get to talk to people and whatever, and we were not going to say anything about product. And so as I got it set up, I got a notice from somebody that says, oh, well, you can't talk about anything product related. And I said, of course not. That's not the plan. That's not even, if you listen to their show, that's not what they do. Okay, you're good. In that morning, I had my youngest was doing a little gym's parents come watch the kids do somersaults on mats and stuff. And this is the days well before like a decent iPhone or anything. But I get a text message that says, hey, this has been canceled. I was going in the afternoon to do the show. And they're like, oh, it's been canceled. And now I'm feeling badly because I'd agreed to do this. It's a scheduled thing and I'm going to do something for some friends of mine and be on their show. And now I'm being told, no, we're going to flake on them at the last minute. And I said, but why? And they said, oh, well, because they're analysts and, you're not allowed to talk to analysts. And I said, but that's not, we've already been through this. That's not the con. Anyway, so I'm sitting here and I'm texting and I'm texting and I'm trying to keep this from falling off the rails and failing completely at the parenting thing because my 3-year-old comes and bangs on the window and says, quit looking at that and look at me. So now I'm feeling terrible and guilty about not being able to be a good parent while having taken time off work to go watch the amazing 3-year-old tumbling show. And I never ever was able to make that particular episode happen. And anybody that knows me knows that like graded on two fronts. Obviously the opportunity front, but more importantly, I really hate leaving people in a lurch when I tell them I'm going to do something, probably more than I should. And so, and the entire time.
Well, and that couldn't have reflected very well on Oracle. I mean,
exactly.
Right?
And so the thing that was so surprising to me is like I spent a whole lot of time like trying to figure out like what actually happened there. And much later, as I started to get this pattern over and over again, it became clear that there was someone or someones who wanted to be the person in the spotlight, and I was accidentally seen as taking a spotlight away from them by having an opportunity that wasn't given to them, right? It was given to me for the conversation that I was putting into. And the number of times that this has happened to me professionally is so many as to be absurd. So yeah, it's definitely a recurring pattern for me.
Remember the customer advisory board coordinator that attempted to wield a weird sort of power so we were the leaders of the product organization, and we should have been really the primary people connecting with the customers, right? We were the people that the customers wanted to have the attention of. They wanted to affect product decisions. They wanted to get early information about where the product was going. They wanted to get their fingerprints on, what we were doing. But again and again, this coordinator claimed there just was not room for us in the meeting.
No physical room in the space.
No space.
That I was paying for.
No room.
Yeah.
There was room, by the way. That there wasn't enough food for us. Was there enough food for us, Meg?
Way too much food.
Way too much food.
No chairs.
And that we shouldn't, not enough chairs. We shouldn't come. We went.
That's right.
And that's how we know. That's how we know there were plenty of chairs and there was plenty of food.
That's right. That's right.
Another year, she told me I could join if I took notes. I did not take notes, but I still went. And another time, she asked me to present with lots of caveats about, making sure it was appropriate for the audience and this and that, as if I'd never presented to customers before in my life. And afterwards, she seemed completely shocked that customers were deeply interested in what I was sharing with them. It was really incredible.
I had a case in one of those similar types of meetings where, again, I was invited to not have a speaking part, but maybe go ahead and welcome people and, sort of all this stuff. And then there was this like massive gap in the conversation where it became clear I had to like pick up the entire slack and steer the conversation back in a place that the customers felt like they could connect with and be part of the conversation. It's just so mind-blowing. And then don't forget, way back when we used to have the open worlds in the city, you got invited to some sort of analyst dinner that I was not allowed to go to, And it was like, so like I had to show up later to pick you up so that I could say hi to everybody. It was, yeah.
So weird. So many gymnastics.
Yeah.
So, so the gatekeeper themselves isn't necessarily wanting the visibility themselves. However, I think, that there is a level of control that they lack elsewhere, that they come equipped with. So I don't know. I don't, what is like, what's your advice for young Meg?
So I guess if I were to talk to my former self, what I would, number one, remind myself not to get quite so discouraged on some of the losses, because ultimately I would find a way for the wins to outnumber the losses, and to just kind of trust in myself in that process. I think really getting more of the Amy Wilson mindset, which is just go and make them throw you out. I think I learned a lot in navigating these things with Amy, and I quit getting surprised by people doing this to me. I quit finding it surprising at all. And then the most important thing is back to the point about like what are the motivations? So the coordinator and the, sort of the person managing the velvet rope, like that is a thing that happens. People feel powerful, that they can control who is in and who is out, but they always are responding to the signaling of someone else who is trying to control the things that they feel are important to them. And if there's one sort of thing that I've learned as part of that, is that, people can be very, very threatened by how much that I care about some of these types of things.
Anything.
And so,
yeah,
all the things. Yeah.
So the other thing that you didn't mention that I think is important to mention is having your eyes on the real purpose, right? Like, so the purpose wasn't necessarily to be invited or to even go to the thing, but the purpose was to be able to hear the conversation, to be in the conversation, to learn about what customers were thinking and needing, what analysts were thinking and needing. You know what I mean? So by kind of putting the objective out there, then that allowed for like some creativity around like, okay, well, how can we meet this objective even if there is this gatekeeper that's preventing us from, fully showing up the way that our egos should allow us to. So you gave that example of coming at the end of the analyst dinner, and it wasn't sufficient, but it still allowed for creating that connection with the analysts and getting maybe a nugget of information or what have you. So I think, kind of keeping the purpose in mind is key.
And we also did some very cool things. Like we created what I would now consider like an unconferencey kind of framework, where we went out to customers and met with them directly. And we went and, we created our own spaces to get what we needed when we realized that the official channels were just always going to stay blocked for us for a while. Amy Wilson genius on that, I'd say.
Just show up. Archetype number 4. Now we're getting a little more sinister here, and this is the saboteur. So this is the person who is actively working to undermine you. So maybe some of the others, maybe it wasn't totally conscious or it was a little subtle, but this one's getting into, this one's pretty active. It's really undermining, and they're smiling to your face. I believe that you might have a story or two.
Possible, yeah. I would imagine there's probably stories even earlier than I realized, because I for a long time wouldn't really allow myself to believe that this was happening. But I remember I was having a chat with the boss at the time, and he accidentally let slip that in a conversation with one of my peers, he made the comment that, he found it shocking that Meg wasn't in his office always talking about this peer, but the peer was always in his office talking about Meg. And what was so fascinating about this was we were peers in the org chart sense, but not in any sense of like our work didn't really overlap. This was back in my days of running engineering groups where I would have one product and a peer would have a different product, and those products really didn't have much to do with each other. And so we were sort of archetype peers, but not like peers. I wasn't a threat in my own mind anyway. There was nothing that I was doing that should have been threatening someone else's product, and yet somehow I was. And so this like pulled me back pretty hard, I think, at first, mostly because he put into words something that I suspected but was trying really hard not to see. And it forced me to take a moment and ask myself a few really important questions. One, to acknowledge that there is a path to professional ascendance that requires you to push down people that you see as a threat so that you can take that one scarce role or be seen as the one most achieving. And that can come in a lot of different ways. Maybe it's how stock is being apportioned. Maybe it's about how promotions are being apportioned. Maybe it's about how credit and status and sort of non-monetary rewards are coming. But one way or another, you come to a point sometimes where your success is seen as a threat to someone else's because in their mind there's a scarcity of opportunity. And so I think acknowledging that really hurt initially, but one of the things that it taught me, and I think, again, anything that forces you to let go of your naive view of the world and build some actual resilience, I think is worth doing. It gave me an opportunity to decide explicitly what kind of leader did I want to be, and at what cost did I want career progression? And I made a very intentional choice very early, surprisingly early, where I said, if that is the requirement of success, of actively spending an ounce of my energy or time trying to bring someone else down so that I can look better than them, like that competitive way of looking at the world of a zero sum, I want no part of that. I want to create a world, live in a world, and be part of a world that allows me to do great work, not to harm someone else. Mm-hmm. And I made a very conscious decision that I was never going to pursue progress for myself in that way. And that has, I think that's helped me more than it's hurt me. I don't think that is something to do lightly. I think you need to make that decision on purpose.
I don't know if we explicitly discussed this, but I feel like there was some sort of like telepathic energy that unified us in those PeopleSoft days, right? And then onto Oracle, where we were very different, and we bristled at each other a little bit here and there, but ultimately we recognized in each other that mindset.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And I think we also recognized that this was a deep core value for us. Yeah. That this kind of integrity really mattered to us, probably more than most.
Yeah.
And
like it was the top thing. Like
yeah, exactly. Like it supersedes all of the other things. Yeah. And what's so interesting now as I reflect back, and like, if I were to like encourage myself, I don't think I would change anything about how I got to where I got, but I would remind myself is that really successful people are not the ones that are pushing down other people. The number one people don't need to do that. It's really a second-rate personality quirk that forces you to try to make someone less to make yourself more important. And so it wasn't just about values. It's also about like, what aspirations did I really have for myself? And, I
And
don't,
that's why it's so important to have good role models too, so that you can see that, right?
right. That's right.
We also have a shared saboteur
Yeah.
story.
Like a superset saboteur
Yeah,
story.
this is like a whole group of saboteurs, right?
A coordinated threat against the Meg and Amy excellence.
Meg was threatening on her own, I was threatening on my own, but together we were a force
So
of
scary. That's
threat.
right.
So, yeah, imagine these like crazy threatening women who will do anything in their power to not compete with you.
With their blue nail polish.
But anyway, we had some people who really wanted to make our lives difficult. So first of all, we had a pretty fantastic product idea that Meg's team built, and it was like the jewel of the product suite. Customers were super into it. We got a lot of attention for it. So understandably, people would be jealous, but these counterparts, both in development and in product, basically copied 80% of our idea and then added their own flair to create their own product. And then insisted that their product was way better, that it should be showcased. There was absolutely no attribution to what we had done at all. It also just didn't stop there. Like they wanted to own everything. They badmouthed our ideas and our execution and our technical chops at every angle.
Like they would come and they would say, well, that's just a stupid idea. And we'd counter with, well, but this is what customers say. This is what the market's saying. This is where the future is. And then they would be like, well, but it's technically wrong. And then we would come back and we'd say, but actually, it's very technically sound. And we've already proven out the technology. And then they would come back and they say, well, but it doesn't belong in your area. It belongs in our area. And then we'd be like, but wait a minute, it's only ever used in our domain. And I mean, so like it was just this like crazy, like every time it was like this Hydra thing. Every time you thought you'd had the discussion and you'd brought in all the people and everybody agreed that it belonged with us, then the next time, and then they went all the way back to the beginning and was like, well, it's just dumb and it's not going to work and therefore needs to be stopped. And we're like, well, wait a minute. If it's so dumb, why do you want it so bad? Like, it was just
right.
Such a circular argument. My brain was constantly like, I don't even understand what you think you're accomplishing other than making yourself look dumb here.
So we kept proving ourselves, moving forward. But gosh, it was a huge energy drain, right?
And just when we would think we'd finally put it to rest so we could get back to work, it would come back again and again and again. It was just relentless in which is again a good indicator that it's not about the thing at all, right? It's about something else.
So what would you tell our former selves, Meg?
Oh, goodness. Stop working with small people.
Yeah, when people show you who they are, pay attention and move on, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like this one was probably the hardest. If I were to like the repeating of getting blocked out of things is a big one. But the other big one for me is when it comes down to bad behavior causing something to either not happen or be done in the wrong way for the product or the business. This is where it becomes very, very difficult for me to just let it go. If somebody needs a gold star, some glitter, if they need to be the one with the microphone, if they need to be the one with the patent or whatever, like for the most part of that, like I'll have my glory somewhere else. I'll make my money somewhere else. Like none of those things are really can sway me, and most of the time I will yield. But when it's clear we're making a terrible decision for our customers, for our business, for our product long-term health, and we're doing it strictly for nonsense human behavioral problems, this is where it becomes such a deal breaker for me that I cannot lose. And when I cannot lose, the costs can be very, very, very high. And so I think, when I look back, I'm proud of myself for the things I stood up for, but I also just need to, I would want to remind myself to be sure. And again, I think if I reflect, I still hold that these were important, critical, foundational things for the future that needed to be done right, not done based on, internal politics or, bad behavior. I just and so this is, I think, the place where you just have to decide, how do you show up when things are hard, when you're doing, and then just be proud of yourself for holding to your values.
Yeah, this was occurring in our mid-level career, and I believe it also taught us a lot of lessons about, upper level leadership that we took to heart later on, which is, don't allow this to happen in your org. I feel like it taught us a lot of kind of even further philosophical, how do you show up yourself as, an ambitious person, but how do you manage and support an organization and make sure that people are in it for the right reasons and they're not, kind of perpetuating some of these bad behaviors.
And they're not wasting so much important capacity based on their own insecurities, because that's, just the amount of time and energy that was burned on this particular thing coming round and round and round again. Totally unsustainable, and certainly the wrong thing for the business.
Anything else on the saboteur section?
If I were to give a couple core things to remind my past self or anyone out there listening, is at some point you have to acknowledge when people are taking the time and the effort to try to sabotage you, it's because you're probably pretty good at what you do. And so instead of letting it completely knock you in the gut, just take a moment and say, hey, I've struck a chord and maybe I can be more generous, but this is a sign that I am making progress. And I think, so my father-in-law, who's passed now, but is, early in my career, he was one of the most senior executives I had ever been around, because I did not come from a family of professionals. But he had a couple pieces of advice, and one that stuck with me forever and still does was, don't let your enemies know who they are. Do not spend more time worrying about other people than doing what is right. And don't let that toxicity become the relationship that you have. So again, it's not just about don't, be sneaky about the fact that they're, that you really aren't aligned or they're your enemy, but try to just, as much as you can, let it go as you would anybody who's doing something that's beneath you, right? Because ultimately, they're doing it as a last-ditch effort because none of their other things are as productive for them. They don't have the ability to be as successful without trying to sabotage you. And so, I think you should just feel a little bad for them and, invoke a little bit of generosity of wow, isn't it a shame that you don't have other ways to spend your time and your talents that are more productive than spending time trying to take me down a peg, And
there's always a song for this. Taylor Swift's Actually Romantic, right?
That's right. She knows.
Taylor Swift has a song for everything.
Indeed, especially the messy bits.
Okay, so our next segment is not exactly an archetype, but there will be archetypes involved. And this is what I'm going to call the proxy war. This is when you're caught in a battle that actually has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your skills or your performance, your capabilities. And this was a big one that you, Meg, and I lived together. So Meg and I were leading a product portfolio. We built it, we knew the customers, we were the face of it in the market. And we had this software partner that started off as a nice add-on to our solution. And over time, this partner started to position themselves as a replacement to our core products. And they'd go into our customers and pitch against us while still being our partner. And the sales team loved this partner because the commission structure was such that the deals were very lucrative to the individual reps, and they could make their quotas by selling it. And then the incentives just kept getting sweeter. And meanwhile, the math for the actual business was terrible. We were essentially giving away dollar bills to collect dimes. And we fought hard to restructure or eliminate this partnership. It was hurting the core business so badly. But here's where it gets interesting. So behind our backs, our counterparts in sales and marketing, and even people above us, started negotiating an even bigger deal with this partner, one that would essentially hand over our entire product portfolio to them. They didn't loop us in because they knew we'd object, which yes, of course we would, because the math was absurd and we'd be trading significant revenue for a fraction of the return. In the end, the deal fell apart on its own because it didn't make any sense. But by then, the damage was done. The trust was broken. What did we do, Meg?
And ending on such a like this. Up until now, we've been picking scabs. This one, we like literally full on wound care. Yeah, so I think there's a couple things to layer on. So back to the proxy war bit, I think there were multiple layers of motivation that were important. One, I think that falls into, the realm of narcissism and saboteur, somebody who maybe felt threatened by the Meg and Amy combo, and was looking for a way to use the tools of sabotage against us. I think there were also interesting moments in timing. I think everything that happens in a large company happens against a broader backdrop of what's going on in the business landscape, what's going on in the boardroom, what's going on in the executive suites, and where are each of the individuals feeling pressure. And so I think this particular type of proxy war was kind of an unfortunate moment of timing because there was a lot of pressure building up. And so there was a lot of motivation to find some other team that was to blame and that was responsible for things that were maybe not even tied to our business. The fact that there's a sort of a layer of political landscape when you get to very senior roles is something you always have to keep an eye on, because there can be a lot of things going on that have nothing to do with your exact work that become impactful to your work. And then I think the other big part of this in terms of the way you described the math is really important. This was a very big problem, not a small problem, both in scale and in size. And it was a kind of a problem that was required a level of expertise to fully appreciate. And I think that in this proxy war element, people exploited that by, if they did understand the big picture, focusing on a small piece of it. So it's sort of like the worst kind of bike shedding that could happen. So it really was kind of unfortunate conglomeration of timing, bad behavior, and I'd almost put in this sort of category of bad luck. These are moments where you realize who you are and have to make really hard decisions based on your values and based on what matters to you. And I think you have to be mature enough, adult enough to separate the nonsense behavior from the deal breakers for you personally, because the nonsense behavior is noise. The narcissism, the sabotage, whatever, those are like irritating and frustrating, but those are deal breakers with a person. Those aren't deal breakers with a role. Those aren't deal breakers with your, often with your job. But once you lay on the characteristics of narcissism, which if you do any research, you know it's like unsolvable behavioral problems, and you layer on the core values, then you start to get to a different fork in the road, if you will, to say, all right, is this something I can fix, or is this something that is not going to be able to be fixed by me? And I think you get to a point where you really have to know what those deal breakers are for yourself. And for me, I have a very high tolerance for nonsense and noise, and I have very high tolerance for pain and suffering and hard work. But I do not have a high tolerance for strategic decisions that harm the business or the customers. And so at some point you make a decision that like you see the world differently, and therefore you have to make a decision that aligns with your values. So I like to describe that, in my case, you throw yourself on the grenade to save the business, and you feel good about it, sort of.
Yeah, a couple things. So one, I would say, when a gatekeeper gets in your way professionally, you can work around it. When a narcissist gets in your way professionally, you need to exit. It's as simple as that. Like, there's just not.
Especially if they're really good at it, you're never going to win.
Yeah. And then the other thing, so like Meg said, there were really two things going on here. There was, a narcissist in sabotage mode, and then there was the proxy war that was going on above us. And I've learned that proxy wars happen a lot. And especially when you're an executive, that is often, going to be the thing that makes it impossible for you to continue in the role. And it has absolutely nothing to do with who you are, your performance, anything about you at all whatsoever. You are just a pawn in someone else's war. And it's good to recognize this, again, to make sure that you are telling that story to yourself, that it is not about you. Sometimes executives don't work out for other reasons, but, as I have seen throughout my experience and watching other, very, very good, very successful executives not work out, a lot of the time it is because of this reason. And it is so important that you recognize it and you can brush yourself off and move forward.
And I think the best way to do that is to really know who you are. Remind yourself of who you are. And if you're living up to your values, if you're doing good work, if you're protecting your team and your customers and your business, you win some, you lose some. But you should always feel proud of what you managed to accomplish in that.
So we have shared all sorts of grievances in honor of Festivus.
Festivus, yes, the airing of the grievances.
But, it wasn't always bad, right, Meg? I mean, the reason that, we were considered a threat and we got sabotaged and diminished and all that kind of stuff is because we had a lot of wins too. And so I thought maybe we could, as a little bit of a palate cleanser, share a couple of these fun stories too. Let's talk about one of our early wins. And, I would say this was at Oracle, and it was the very early days of the cloud. So very little cloud stuff was happening at the time. But Meg and I were able to capture the attention of the EVP of Product and Technology with a pitch and a plan for taking a new product line to the cloud. And as a result, we had many high-stake meetings. And it really was in these meetings that Meg and I became a force of two. But Meg, I think you have like a very specific story that you want to share along these lines.
Yeah, well, actually, maybe even I want to rewind even a little bit more. My first win with Amy Wilson was a bystander win. So Amy had been running the time and labor product, and I had that was one of the products in my portfolio. But if I'm honest about it, I was probably the least involved in the particular product release. And so, although it was a very big release, I just hadn't been as hands-on because I was very hands-on with some of the other stuff going on. And I was doing what I did at conferences. So I used to sign up to go to the conference by agreeing to do the ask the expert thing, and people would come and they'd ask questions. And
The Gatekeeper didn't keep you out of the conference?
They tried, but I signed up for the grunt work booth duties so that I could go. And so I had done my shift, and then usually what I would do at conferences is try to find a corner to hide. So that I
could... the telepathy was going on.
Exactly. And there happened to be beanbags sitting in this one corner. So I was like on a beanbag in the corner, kind of hiding out behind the area where all the people were talking to the experts. And these two women were walking by in the aisle on the way to another part of the booth. And they literally, and I'm not making this up, these two women high-fived each other about how great it was that they had just come out of the time and labor presentation and all the stuff that we had in that release. And when I saw these two women felt their own pride for the work that Amy had done, I was like, wow, I've never seen anything like that. This woman is the real deal. So that's when I became like I think I need to invest more in paying attention to what Amy says needs to happen with products. So fast forward. That's right. Fast forward to, okay, now we have this great innovative idea. It's got a patent. It's got this design. We came to the idea late because Amy was in charge of it. And we'd missed the window where everybody had locked all the scopes. So we take this idea all the way up actually to Thomas Kurian initially and presented it to him. And he opened up a path for us with the head of tools to build us some components we needed late so that we could deliver this product. So first off, we're already like getting permission to do things that no one else is getting permission in this moment in time, with a lot of green light at the executive layer that was also very unusual. And so when we get a first draft of it built, and we were struggling to get things fixed for us so that it would be high enough quality we could take it to customers. So we'd made it through all of these hurdles, but now we had a product and it just wasn't that great yet. You know what I mean? But it had like all this potential. And so we're like, how do we get them to take all of these little nitpicky things that seem small, they keep pushing it down to next release. How do we get them to care about fixing these for us so we can release now? And so I'm positive this was Amy's idea, but we basically, instead of like presenting our list, which we'd done several times and everything had been rejected, we just said, you know what? We would like to show you, the EVP of the group that had built this for us, what a great thing your team built for us and how grateful we are. So we scheduled this meeting with this premise, and we had someone in our team demonstrate what we had built. And every single thing that was annoying the crap out of us and getting in the way of our building it, he had the idea that it needed to be fixed for us. And, basically added things to the list so that we had not just the list of things that were blocking us, but a few other things that we thought we were getting too greedy to ask for to get fixed so that we could have that release.
And there were no comments about my toes.
No comments about your toes. And ultimately, what we realized was that these groups didn't get enough appreciation for the work that they did. And so while we had done all the things to make somebody strong arm them into building things for us, it was actually us going and showing gratitude and showing them what we had built, thanks to them, that actually unlocked so much for us going forward.
Such a great lesson.
Yeah.
Now, I picked up on something that you said, Meg, which was...
That you were amazing?
No. You said something about it was late because of Amy. That you were saying?
Yeah.
My ideas came late, or
just that you think deadlines are a little bit flexible and negotiable.
Yes, that was pretty awesome. And now no comments on my toes, but I do think we probably coordinated our outfits and spent some time on our hair.
We brought our A game. We brought all of the tools that we had to that game for sure.
All right. Well, and thank you for telling the time and labor story too. And I didn't realize that you didn't attend the session.
No.
I thought you attended
I wasn't
the
allowed.
session.
I didn't have a pass that I could go to the session.
Oh, I thought you had attended the session, and then it was on the way out of the session that people were saying,
No.
"Okay, wow."
No.
That's funny because people they stood up and applauded too. So yeah.
Yeah, I heard, but I was not allowed.
But I'm just glad that I won you over. So
it was destined to happen.
Can I tell another brag story? Unfortunately, this was relatively early in my SAP days, so before you joined me there. So I had to present and demo to the board, which included Hasso Plattner, the chairman of the board, and he was notorious for being like a real stickler, really, hard to please. And, everyone was in a tizzy, and the whole situation is that there's this room, and then there's kind of this green room, but it's really everybody sitting out in the hallway for hours, potentially waiting for their moment. And I could tell that, the other product lines, they weren't going very well. And the presentation and demo was really about user experience. And at the time, SAP was very disconnected from a UI perspective, lots of different acquisitions that had come together. And there was this growing sense that we needed to have a more unified experience. And so these demos were supposed to show, kind of cross-system flows and how we were overcoming the experience deficits. So I started off by going in with a regular demo of what existed, trying to kind of piece things together. And it was ugly as hell, right? I mean, it was just absolutely hideous. And, Hasso was getting frustrated, but I knew this because it was my setup. And then I came in with a prototype demo of a chatbot interface. And so again, this was a long time ago. This was well before
Amy was there first, always
LLMs and chatbots, and went through the same exact scenario, but using this chatbot interface and showcasing kind of the future of where you don't have to invest deeply into expensive user experiences that transcend across every single product you have, but instead you can have kind of this lightweight experience that goes all the way through. And Hasso was jumping out of his chair. I felt like Hamilton must have felt when the guys are like, who is this? Who is this? We got to get him, we got to get him out there. And he's like, when can we build this? When is this going to come out? Amy, when is this coming out? And, I didn't have like complete control over that. So it did take many years for it to happen. But obviously this is what's happening in general, and I'm going to take credit for it.
Well, I don't think it's in question at all. You absolutely deserve credit for it. I like to say oftentimes that I'm for sure that I'm not a witch, but I'm also not 100% sure that I'm not a witch, because I have on many occasions decided something needs to happen and make it happen. And so I've always been really proud of myself for this thing. I'm ultimately someone that gets in her mind something's going to happen, and then it does. But then I realize, the more I reflect, that it's actually Amy is the one that had the idea and is probably the real witch. I think that it was my idea, and I think that I executed something that I had in mind, when in fact she just is the one behind the curtain that has decided this is going to happen. So
well, but I remember that there was a time when you put it out in the universe, right? You manifest it. So at one point you had said, we are going to have Larry Ellison demo our product.
Damn straight.
At Open World. It's going to happen.
I was at a training class, and there was somebody talking about like, okay, you should like set your intentions for what's going to happen. And I literally wrote that down. Larry Ellison's going to demo our product. And, Larry's not a real HR person, and our products were very HR focused. So the entire idea was somewhat nonsense, but I'll be damned if it didn't happen. We absolutely
2 years later.
That's right. That's right.
Patience and grace.
So do not underestimate the combination of the Meg and Amy force of will. We will find a way, and we will learn something along the way for sure.
And so I think that's a nice segue to what's coming in season 2. Right? Like, what did we learn this year? What are our hopes and dreams for season 2, Meg?
I have to say that I knew we needed to start a podcast, but I did not fully appreciate how much having a podcast was really going to add to my life. So I'm very grateful for you, Amy, for taking the leap with me with very, minimal clarity of what we were going to do and why we were going to do it. I knew I wanted to have conversations, not just from a female lens, but from an innovator lens and from a human lens, a sort of a human-centric view of where technology, business, and innovation needs to take us, and where we are going to play a part in that. I think 2026 is going to be a year where there is true breakout between mediocre and exceptional. And that's going to be true in a lot of dimensions. So I'm kind of internalizing this sort of year of the fire horse. I'm internalizing the idea that there is going to be a pullback from the bubble. And we're going to start to see durable and sustainable ideas versus ideas that are, were fashion or fad. And I think this is a place where being in Amy Wilson's orbit becomes super powerful. And I think this is the year that we have conversations that help us not only reflect a point of view, but bring forward our point of view. And I think that point of view is for the next decade. So I think 2026 is the year we really unlock more clarity as opposed to just questions.
Well, I've really loved the learning, and I don't think I would have learned a quarter as much this year, even with you sending me all the articles I was supposed to read. And if we hadn't had this podcast. So I'm really hoping that that we can do even more of that, of finding interesting people, learning from them, expanding their knowledge as well, and then of course just continuing to expand the viewers and what they're getting out of this program. So thank you for suggesting it aggressively, Meg. It's been a hoot.
It has. And I also just want to say a quick shout to all of the people that have encouraged us, have supported us, have given us ideas and challenged us along the way. Our guests, our listeners, thank you so much for helping us find our way with this podcast. So please tell a friend. We look forward to growing our audience.
And in particular, our amazing creative director and executive producer,
Madison. We would be nothing without you. So enjoy the heck out of this baby and the maternity leave. And we look forward to launching season 2 with you. Say, let's invent the future together, everyone. I believe in us.
Let's make every day count.